Good morning, family. So good to be here, and thank you for having me, Pastor Josh. This is a privilege and an honor of mine. My name is Leedah, like cheetah, and it takes an army of people to put all this together. So I just want to say thank you to all our volunteers of the church, and thank you to the leadership. Go ahead and say thank you to them. I don't know what time you woke up this morning. I'm pretty sure the drummer woke up at the crack of dawn, set up that drum set, and we are grateful for all the core team that helps be the backbone of this church. So I used to live here in Hayward, and I used to live on A Street. It was a lot of fun because my GPS would say, "Take right on a street." Like, which one are you talking about, man? It was a whole lot of fun. And my wife and I, we've been married coming up on 12 years now. We've been foster parents. I was a pastor of a black church for 5 years, and I was repping Chinatown in Chocolate City, so it was a lot of fun there. And then I was a pastor of a white church for 3 years, which was a lot of fun. And now we are planting. It was a transitionary period, definitely, at the black church because, I grew up in East San Jose, but I definitely had to have a little learning curve with our black brothers and sisters in the black community. I remember one time somebody came to my office and, "Pastor Leedah, this is so good." They cooked some soul food for me. They said, "This is so good, make you want to slap your mama." What did you say? So he explained what it means. It's a compliment, it's so good, it makes you want to slap your mama. Slap your mama good. And so I had we were at an event at the church a couple months later, and I had the food, and I was like, "Man, this is so good." And so I ran into the kitchen of the church, and there were like 4 chefs, they were cooking, just throwing it down in the kitchen. I was like, "Man, that was so good, I want to slap your mamas." And they all were cooking. "What did you say?" And they're like, "Pastor Leedah, that's supposed to be your mama want to slap, not ours." And I was like, "Whose mama are we slapping? I don't know whose mama we slapping." Shoot, every mama gets a slap. And then transitioned to a white church after my time there. And then that was interesting because then I picked up these little things in the black church. Like I would start to say, "Well," like in the black community, if you agree with something, you say, "Well," and that's just something you do, like, "Oh, I had, blah, 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 In-N-Out's better than McDonald's." Well, that's something you just do. And then when I transitioned to the white church, our Anglo brothers and sisters hey Tim, Pastor Tim, our Anglo brothers and sisters, they use the word "well" in like the opposite way. So they say "well" like, "Well," because they disagree with you, right? So they'll say it in disagreement. And so I'd be like in these meetings, and I'd be like, "Oh man, that's so good, that's such a good point." And it's just me and a bunch of our Anglo brothers and sisters in the meeting. I'd be like, "Well," and they all stop and look at me. I'd be like, "What are you talking about? I agree with you." They're like, "No, you disagree with us." And we get this whole debate of the use of "well." So a lot of fun in the cultural learnings of whatever context God has placed me in. And now my wife and I are planting a church in Fremont. And we are grateful to be in the season we're in. This is terrifying and exciting all at the same time. Our church is Restore 22 with the vision restoring the greatest commandment found in Matthew 22, to love God all your heart, mind, and soul. And from that, to love people boldly. And we have a little core team. We'll be running home right after this to meet with our core team every Sunday. And we meet to pray, and we hope to launch in 12 to 18 months. So definitely, I'm grateful for Pastor Josh and his openness to having me, and then having the opportunity, if God so leads you, to support our vision of planting more churches in the Bay Area where it is 2 to 3% church. We just need more churches and more gospel movements in this Bay Area. You guys are in the book of Revelation. Real fun. Oh man, that's great. I want to give you just something tangible today. Just something quick, tangible, and actually how to live in light of the end times. And the message today is how to bless your city. So we're going to just go through this acronym, BLESS. Everybody say BLESS. And it's basically taken from the evangelical covenant denomination uses this, and I've been kind of living this life a little bit. But let me go ahead and just open us in a word of prayer, or just pray for this time together. Lord, this is your family, this is your church, and you have desires, and you have your heart for your people here. And your heart is to draw your church and your family closer into your arms of grace, so that you can send them out and bring that message of hope and light into the world. We pray as we are spending this morning together, we pray that you would just open the eyes of our hearts to see how you are working, how your grace is being dispensed in our lives, and how you strengthen and enrich us so that we can then overflow with your hope and mercy to our neighbors, our families, our friends, our city, and the world. For your glory. This is all for you, Lord. This is all to make your name great. So we thank you that you have saved us to yourself. And now you have called us to bring that saving grace to the entire universe. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So in the concept of bless, we start with B, which is begin with prayer. We'll just walk through B-L-E-S-S. Begin with prayer. And the question is, what do you pray for? Who do you pray for? There's a biblical concept called oikos. Everybody say oikos. This is basically the household in the day of, this is when the Bible is written. And anytime you see, oftentimes when you see people saved to saving faith, they bring their oikos with them. So it wasn't just them experiencing a transformative relationship with Jesus, they also brought their oikos, or their household. And in that time, it wasn't just their brothers and their sisters and slapping mamas. It was also bringing their neighbors, the people that were in their lives, that knew them well. So if you look at Luke, in this verse here, you'll see this concept of oikos played out. Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you. This is a person that met Jesus, and Jesus sends these demons into pigs, and then everyone gets happy because they get bacon for the next 2 years. And these pigs, roll off into the cliff, and the person's saved, and he wants to follow Jesus. And Jesus says, no, you return to your home and declare how much God has done for you. This is return to your oikos. Everybody say oikos. In the next verse, we have the tax collector, Zacchaeus. He pays back money he's stolen, and Jesus said to him, today, this is in Luke 19, verse 9, today salvation has come to this house. And the slide will come up here next thing, I'm sure. But basically, in the word house, it's oikos. Today, salvation has come to this oikos. So not just Zacchaeus, but also your household. The people you know. The people that are connected with you. And then in Acts 10, Paul gets a dream of animals in a net and is told to share the gospel with a Roman soldier named Cornelius. And it says in Acts 10, verse 24, Cornelius was expecting them and had called together his relatives and close friends. And then finally in Acts 18:8, Paul was preaching in Corinth, and it says in Acts chapter 18, verse 8, Crispus, the ruler of the synagogue, believed in the Lord together with his entire household, his entire oikos. So this screen will come up, I'm sure, later on. But what we see often in the Bible, we see someone comes to saving faith, and then we see them bring their oikos along. We see them bring their household along. It wasn't just family. We're talking about this understanding of people that knew them well. And today, there's a book by Tom Mercer called 8 to 15. Raise your hand if you know this book. I'm just curious if people know this. It's a book called 8 to 15, The World is Smaller Than You Think. And it basically says there's 8 to 15 people that are a part of your oikos. These are people that know you well. These are people that you see on a regular basis. Your neighbors, your coworkers, your family and friends. Unsaved people, 8 to 15 of them. And you are saved. You're brought into a saving faith with Jesus. So you can experience reconciliation with God, and you can bring your saving faith and the graces and riches and mercy of Jesus to your oikos, your 8 to 15 people. And so when we say begin with prayer, the first B is you pray for your oikos. You pray for your neighbors, the people that you live with, right? You pray for your coworkers, the people that you work with. You pray for your friends, the people that you hang with. You pray for your family. Prayer does not equip us for greater works. Prayer is the greater work. And you can see here, thank you for throwing up the slide. You can see here, I just put it in yellow, basically. Anytime you see the word oikos, anytime somebody's brought to saving faith, Christmas, we'll just sing, I believe in the Lord, together with this entire oikos, you see again and again people find Jesus, and then they bring their oikos to Jesus as well. So the first B is begin with prayer. Then we have L, listen. Today's unchurched people think Christians are judgmental, condemning, and bigoted. Listening means you're not talking. It means you're asking questions. And when we listen well, we are restoring God's image as a God who cares. We're showing we are more than the picketing religious right on TV who vote and hate people a certain way. In Acts 17:22, Paul walks around and he says, people of Athens, I see that in every way you are religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, and it continues to say in the Greek here, the word looked, it actually means looked. And the word carefully in the Greek actually means carefully. So, he looked carefully. He understood. He listened well. He studied well. He grasped the culture that was around him. When you listen carefully, you provide a safe space for people to share their worldviews, hearts, and longings, and ultimately helps you understand them and helps them feel understood. Questions to your neighbors about their family. Questions to your coworkers about their career aspirations. A good question about faith I use often is, do you have a faith community background, or do you have a background in any faith community? When Francis Schaeffer was asked how he would spend an hour with a non-Christian, he said, I'd listen for 55 minutes, and then in the last 5 minutes I'd have something to say. I was taking an Uber ride up to San Francisco airport from Fremont. It was a pretty long drive. And I just started asking my driver a bunch of questions. So what do you do? Is this something you do full time? You know, how's your family? And we started talking about faith as I asked him the question. And at the end of our ride, we even got into some dicey stuff, talking about the LGBTQ community, and he knew I was a pastor. And at the end of the ride, he said, man, this has been such a refreshing conversation. I have never had a conversation about faith with a Christian without having it being full of animosity. Thank you for that conversation. And it's filled with questions. I just asked him questions because I wanted to listen well. Blessing others ain't always about what you say, but many times it's what you enable someone to say. That could have used an amen right there. So I preached at Black Church for 5 years. That could have been amen, right? That would have been perfect. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Well, begin with prayers, B. L is listen carefully. E is eat together. So these are, again, ways that we can be salt and light to our community here in Hayward. Today, nobody's coming to church. I've given you the statistic already. It's only a few percentage points of people that are in a church on a Sunday morning in the Bay Area, the most unreached people in the country. In the 80s and 90s, people were indifferent. They're like, you go to church? Good for you. Today, they're hostile. Am I right? Today, they're hostile. Like, what? You believe that backwards caveman thinking? So you got to do some PR work for Jesus before the invite. You got to show them some personal love, because people don't care what you know unless they know that you care. So you got to feed them. You got to feed them some good slap your mama food, because that food shows them God's love in a tangible way. It's beautiful that churches do community service for the events and for the neighborhoods. But have you ever had your atheist neighbor over for dinner in your kitchen table? That will make so much of a mark in their heart if you just open your home your apartment, your kitchen table, to your atheist neighbors, your agnostic neighbors, your ex-Catholic, your former believing, unchurched, de-churched friends and family, your oikos, your Buddhist family, your Hindu co-workers. Have you treated them to lunch before? When you open your home to feed your 8 to 15 through the power of the Holy Spirit, God's love opens the door and it paves the way for the gospel. And so when you invite them to church, invite them to your worship gatherings, then their heart is softened. Food is very important in the process of evangelism. I want to ask you this question here. Throw up this next slide here. I want you to picture with me. There's a flyer you get today. So you get this flyer. It's like, Carnival of Lights, come to our synagogue. We have a great Jewish event here at the local synagogue down the street. And you get this flyer in the mail. I want you to raise your hand if you would consider, just consider. Raise your hand if you would consider going. Okay, we have maybe 10 people or so. Put your hands down. I want you to picture in another situation where you're walking down the street and a Jewish person holds this flyer and says, here's the flyer for you. Now, you get the flyer hand to hand and you look at it. He's like, hey, come to our synagogue. Raise your hand if you would consider going to the event. Just consider. Raise your hand. Oh, less people. Yeah, I don't know. You? 3 people, 4 people? Okay. Now let's picture a third scenario here. Third scenario is you have a Jewish neighbor. Okay? And they're having, you know them, you kind of see them. I mean, most of the time you just drive past and roll into your garage and close the door because you don't want to talk to anybody. Right? Or you roll up into the apartment, open the door, close the door. So you get a knock. And it's your Jewish neighbor. And he says, hey, we're celebrating our kid's 3rd birthday, and we'd love to have you over at our house. We're having some of the other neighbors at our house. We're going to have a lot of food, some drink. It'll be great. We're just going to, turn up Jewish style, right? So you go, and it's like nothing weird. It's nothing like freaky. It's just food, right? And they feed you, and you have a good time. You're like, man, this is pretty cool. And then your Jewish neighbor is like asking you questions like, hey, what do you do for a living, Tim? Oh, you work for InterVarsity? Cool. Great. Fundraising? Oh, good luck with that. Right? It's like, man, okay, that's something that can start a little bit of a softening in your heart. And then maybe you go home and you're like, okay, that was pretty cool. I got to know my Jewish neighbor, his family, his kid. They fed me, and it was a great experience. So, and by the way, I cap on Tim's fundraising because I'm living that life too now. So we're in the same boat. So a couple months later, you get a text, okay? And your Jewish neighbor texts you. He's like, hey, we're watching the Warriors game. And we're going to have a bunch of food, and I'd love for you to come. You're like, okay, I like the Warriors. I'll cheer on for my Dubs. And so you show up, and there's food, and you're having a good time. You're eating, you're screaming like, Curry, why'd you turn the ball over again? What's wrong with you, boy? Pass with 2 hands, not 1. Fundamentals. Sorry, that was, a lot of emotional there. Like just a lot of baggage just comes out randomly when I preach. So when you're eating, you're chopping up with your friend, your Jewish neighbor gives you food. He's like, hey, can I get you something else? Are you good? And you leave that Warriors watching party like, hey, this was a great experience. And over time, your Jewish neighbor becomes your friend. You actually have him over at your house. He has you at his house. You guys actually connect with each other. You text each other random things. You're Facebook friends. You follow each other on social media. He's not just that random neighbor anymore. And now he texts you. He throws this flyer your way. He says, hey, my synagogue is having this event. And I would love you to be my guest of honor at this event for my synagogue. And you don't believe in no synagogue. I mean, you're like, well, I love Pastor Josh. I'm a Christian. I don't need none of this synagogue stuff. And you're like, oh, but it's my neighbor. He's my friend now. I want you to raise your hand. if you would consider going to this event. Raise your hands. Okay, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Look around. Look around, look around, look around, look around. Okay, now put your hands down. You see the difference between the first two scenarios and that? What made the difference? Food! Am I right? He took the energy and the love and the labor to have you at his house again and again and again, and over time it softened your heart, so that now it was 4 hands before, and now it was the majority of the room would consider it. So I want to show you this picture. This is a Christmas party that I had. This is my oikos. This is my living room, my dining room in my home in Fremont, and this is my oikos. So these are my neighbors. These are guys at my gym. 75% of this picture are people that are unchurched. People that I just love to have over at the house. I love to feed. I love to ask them questions about life. I love to love on them. This guy over here in the blue hat is my neighbor, Tony. He lives directly across from me. Has a little baby girl he's raising. We've babysat for him many times. Over here, Ted, above him, right above him. Ted is a scotch collector. He texts me all the time, "Hey, Leedah, would you like to come over for a wee dram?" No, we don't get drunk. I have a little bit of a wee dram every now and then with him. And we talk about life. I get to share. This guy over here is Afghan. His name is Fred Loden, and he's a great guy. Brought all of his kids over to our house. You know, we've had these guys over at our house so many times. I've started a Bible study with these guys now. I've started looking at Scripture with them. And I've been able to share my story. I've been able to have them in a safe and sacred space of questioning words in the Bible. Whatever their background is. Buddhist, agnostic, atheist. One guy is atheist. He hates me. When he first met me at the gym, he hates me because he knows I'm a pastor. Because all the stuff he's been through in life. Mid-40s, guy, Caucasian. He caps on me every moment he can get. Hostile. I invited him to a Habitat for Humanity event. And he said, "Well, you can sell your houses for your church and make a profit." I mean, he hates me. He ended up going to it and digging holes on me side by side. Over time, he's been coming to our Bible study now. I mean, we're talking people that are so far from you, so different than you, in whatever socioeconomic, ethnic range. Your neighbors, your coworkers, the people at your gym. These are your oikos. And every time we see in the Bible, when someone comes to saving faith in Jesus, they bring their oikos along. And that's the same call to you and I. It's that when we found saving faith in Jesus, we bring our oikos along. And we do it by beginning with prayer. We do it by listening. We do it by eating. And then here, we do it by serving. In the next slide, Romans 12:11. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. You can ask them to serve with you when you do your community service projects, or you can serve their tangible needs. Here's the issue, though. Spiritual passion should lead to service, but in American consumerism, we've kind of hijacked spiritual passion and transformed it into spiritual consumption. So our fervor for God doesn't lead to serving others, it just leads to wanting more for ourselves. I'll give you this quick illustration. I want you to imagine walking into a restaurant here, and you walk into your favorite restaurant, just yell it out. Yell out something you like to eat that's local, that's good. In-N-Out. What else? Los Pircos. What else? Corn on the cob. In-N-Out. Okay, a lot of people like In-N-Out here. The rest of you guys don't eat. That's okay. So let's say you walk into your restaurant. Let's just picture like, I don't know, I'm sure Hayward has a Chili's. Don't you guys have a Chili's? Does anyone eat at Chili's anymore these days? No, I'm just shaking my head. No, okay. Yeah, this is a Chinese church. Chili's. Let's see. You guys eat Jen at all? Jen, like the Korean barbecue? Okay, I'm getting some nods now. Okay. So like, I like to go to Jen for special events. A Korean barbecue, all you can eat. I don't stop when I'm full. I stop when I hate myself. You know, that kind of eating, you know? That's the good eats, you know? So you show up to Jen, and you walk in there, and you are expecting to be greeted. So you stand there, and people walk by, but nothing happens. 10 minutes pass, you're like, dude, what gives? This place is whack. I haven't been greeted. Hospitality here is whack. And then finally, 15 minutes go by, someone says, okay, hey, welcome, I'm going to seat you here. Why don't you take a seat? So you're sitting at your table, and you're waiting for your waiter to show up, and it takes 15 minutes for them to show up. You're like, dude, this place is whack. What's going on? 15 minutes? And so they show up, they're like, well, what do you want? Okay, yeah. And you can see the great customer service. Okay, they just type in all the stuff, and they disappear. And you have to wait an hour for your food. It's like raw. You don't even have to cook this thing in the back. What took an hour? And then finally it gets here, you cook and you eat, but you're just pissed and you're just in a bad mood, you're hangry, you're taking out your phone and you're putting this place on blast on Yelp. Man, this place is whack. It took me an hour and a half just to get something raw, so I had to cook it myself. There should be a picture that accompanies that. Yeah, that's you. That's the white version of you. Why do you think that way? It's because that establishment exists to meet your consumer needs. That establishment exists so that you can be happy. So that you get what you want, when you want, and how you want it. That's consumerism, right? Now, I want you to picture walking home. The next slide will show a family. Let's say you walk home and you knock on the door. Let's say you've moved out with your parents if you're a kid, or let's say your parents live far and you finally get to be with them again, and you open the door. Are you going to stand there waiting to be greeted? Are you going to be taking your phone out and putting your parents' place on Yelp? Like, oh, this place is whack. You know, I didn't get nothing. No, you go to the kitchen. You say, how can I help? And you chop food. And you make the rice, and you're like, what can I do to help? And you set the table. Why is that? Because when you see your family, you don't have a consumer mentality. You see this as family. You see this as a family unit, not an establishment to meet my consumer needs. But this is my family. How can I contribute? How can I love? How can I serve? Now, how do you see the crossing? How do you see the church? Is church an establishment that exists to meet your spiritual consumer needs? Because that's what happens all the time. People walk in church, but man, preaching ain't that great. You know, Pastor Josh said something, doing revelations. Like, what the heck, dude? You know, I love Pastor Josh, by the way. I'm just tapping on him. But the children's ministry is whack. You know, we watch this video. I don't even know what's going on here. The events are great. I'm just going to the church down the street. Why do you think that way? Why does America think that way? Americans think that way because we've taken the church, which is supposed to be family, and we've transformed it into an establishment that exists to meet our consumer needs. We've turned it around and said, this is an establishment that exists to get my spiritual dopamine shot on Sunday, and I keep it moving, go home and do me. It's amazing what kind of impact you guys have had in this community and the grounds that you've broken to be in the school today. But it's also amazing what kind of incredibly talented people are just turning into zombies when they walk in here. Oh, feed me, feed me, feed me. Now, you don't need more food. Some of you need exercise. Get off your butt and let's serve together. Let's serve the world together. Matthew 28, go and therefore make disciples of all nations. Jesus said, follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. Not follow me and I'll make you keepers of the aquarium. Some of us, you know, we forget that we're called to make footprints, not just butt prints. That was funny. You can laugh. That's okay. Francis Chan uses this illustration in Madagascar. He says that there's this picture in this scene where the zebra is running, and the zebra's running and is staring at a picture of the jungle on a treadmill. He's like longing for the wild. He's longing for that. And he's running. He's like, man, if I can just get out there. And the lion is here just chilling, just living his best life, right? On Instagram, just living it up. And the lion's like, why would you want to get out of here? We get fed on the regular. I get to yell, and the kids get scared. And the zebra's like, man, I know I was made for something more. And they finally break out of the zoo, and the lion roars, and instincts come back, and he looks over at the zebra. Oh, what's up, zebra? We look at the church and we're like, man, just leave me in my cage. Throw the kids into their cage. We've domesticated Jesus. And we've turned the church into an establishment that exists to meet our spiritual consumer needs. But Jesus says, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail. I'm sending you out like I am sent. Go therefore, make disciples of all nations. That's your oikos. Our churches are like zoos where we've domesticated wild animals. And God's like, you've got 8 to 15 people in your community right now, your neighbors, your coworkers, that you can have over around your dining table to show God's tangible love in your life. That can soften and prepare the path for the gospel. And now after pastoring full-time for the past 8 years, my wife and I have said yes to the call of planting a new church. And we are officially living in the wild, but it's in the wild we get to see an undomesticated God. And we get to see God do incredible, incredible things. So finally, it's B is begin with prayer. L is listen carefully. E is eat together. S is serve. And then finally, the last S is to share. Share your story after you've prayed, after you've listened, after you've fed. Serve. Then share your story. Share the gospel. Share how you see God moving in your life. Psalm 93, declare His glory among the nations, His marvelous works among the peoples. Mark 16, and He said to them, go into all the world and proclaim the gospel. Acts 1:8, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth. I get to share on a regular basis with my guys at the gym, my Bible study with them. I got this Hindu, I got this doctor, this ex-Catholic lawyer, I got this stockbroker, Buddhist. I get to share regularly with them what God's doing in my life. This past Thursday, a few days ago, one of them was like, yeah, well, you're a pastor, you're a Christian, and you live according to the, some way of life. And I'm like, hey, listen, the gospel ain't a way of life. It's not a way of life. The gospel isn't about doing something. The gospel is believing that something has been done. I got to share about Jesus and what His atoning work on the cross for us. And now it's about believing in faith, and it's through faith we are saved. By grace. So my previous pastor, we implemented this whole blessed thing, and we, like you guys, are the crossing, are part of another body, CFC. My previous pastor started something small, and over time, if you go to the next slide, we implemented this, started with a group of a dozen people on the top picture, and we just started throwing parties, having people over at our homes, feeding them, loving them, praying for them, listening to them, serving them. And over a period of about a year and a half, the bottom picture is our last day there before we left to plant a church. And we just saw God grow us. We just saw people take steps towards saving faith and community and family. Because living missionally is not just inviting a non-Christian into a Christian context. Living missionally is activating a Christian within a non-Christian context. And that's what I believe Bless is all about. It's activating you, activating us, the body of Christ. And not see the church as just an establishment to meet our consumer needs. It's not a cruise ship here. Pastor Josh and the staff, they're not your cruise directors running fun events for your family. This is an aircraft carrier. Where God says, go, make disciples of all the earth, and I will be with you. My Holy Spirit will empower you. This is the last verse I will end on. John 3:16 is such an important scripture that everyone knows. Let's read this together. For God so loved the world that He gave His one and only Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish but have eternal life. Why is this so important? It's because John 3:14 exists. If you look at John 3:14, throw that up for me. John 3:14 says this. Not that one. John 3:14 says this. There is just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, that everyone who believes may have eternal life. You see, he's talking about this scene where the Israelites defied God. They rebelled against God. And God, in his anger and his wrath, he sent out snakes to inflict everyone with poison. And so they were all dying in anguish. And then God said to Moses, I want you to build the snake out of copper, and I want you to lift it up out of this copper or whatever metal. And he said, lift it up, and as you lift it up, when the people see it, they will be healed of the poison in their veins. John 3:14 is so important, and it leads us to John 3:16. John 3:16 is so important. God so loved the world, he sent his only son. That's so crucial, because everybody's got poison in them. John 3:14 tells us the world has poison in their veins. This poison leads you to worship sex, to be addicted to pornography, to love family and career over God, to idolize the things of this world. This poison leads us to worship technology, be filled with pride and jealousy and envy. This poison inflicts all of us. And John 3:16 is so important because God sent his son so that Jesus would be lifted up on the cross. And all you would have to do is look upon him and believe. And he will be your antidote. The antidote is not technology. The antidote is not a perfect family or a perfect spouse or the perfect career. The antidote is Jesus, is the gospel. And he's given every one of us believers the antidote. People in the church. He's given us saving faith. And so many of us in the American church have received this antidote, and we just sit on it. Meanwhile, our oikos, our neighbors, our coworkers, our friends and families are perishing. Meanwhile, people around us are dying and suffering, and they do not have the antidote. They have poison running through their veins. And God says, hey, I will save you. I will bless you, just like Abraham, blessed to be a blessing. And so he saves you. He gives you the antidote. So you can bring that to your oikos. You can bring that saving faith. You can bring that grace and the good news and the story of God to the world. Pray with me. Father, it's because you first blessed us that we are able to bless the world. It's first because you didn't begin with prayer, but Jesus, you interceded on our behalf. And you became human and disrobed yourself of divinity so that we might be reconciled to God. And then you listened to us. In Psalm 34, it says, the righteous cry, and the Lord hears them. You hear our cries, God. And you provide our needs, and we get to eat the food of your provision. And you have served us, Lord. You have not been sent here to be served, but to serve and give your life as a ransom for many. And now you share yourself with us. You share the riches of your grace. You share the life that you've lived, the righteousness that you earned on the cross. You impute that. You give that to us as a gift. And it's because you've blessed us. We can bless others. Because you have blessed us, we can bless our oikos. We can begin with prayer. We can listen well. We can eat with them. We can serve them. And we can share the good news with them. It's because you've first done it for us. So, Father, as we close this time and worship together, I pray you would just fill us with your immeasurable grace. Because it's from an overflow of that grace we work and labor and toil. And we make disciples of all nations to bring you more praise and glory throughout the earth. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.